The chandeliers of the grand ballroom at the Metropole Legacy Hotel dripped crystal light onto the city's elite. 1,000 finely tuned personas mingled in a symphony of clinking champagne flutes, murmured pleasantries, and the rustle of silk and bespoke wool. This was the Apex Foundation's annual humanitarian gala, a night where colossal fortunes were pledged to noble causes, and reputations were polished to a blinding sheen. On stage, bathed in a soft, reverent spotlight, stood Dr. Eris Thorne. His tuxedo was a slash of perfect black against the opulent gold of the stage decor. At 42, he possessed a stillness that commanded attention more effectively than any boisterous gesture. His success was the stuff of modern legend Thorne Dynamics, a company he'd built from a garage startup into a global leader in sustainable technology and AI ethics. Was not just profitable, but paradigm-shifting. Tonight, he was being honored for the Prometheus Initiative, a project that provided open-source, AI-driven educational tools to underserved communities worldwide. "We stand at a precipice," Eris was saying, his voice calm and resonant, filling the vast space without effort. "A point in history where our creations possess the potential either to deepen the chasms that divide us or to build bridges across them. The Prometheus Initiative is not about charity. It is about empowerment. It is about placing the tools of the future into the hands of those who will build it." The applause was warm, genuine. He was respected, even admired. In these circles, he had built his life into an impregnable fortress of achievement. Each award another stone in the wall. Each success another layer of armor. He was about to offer his final thanks when a figure detached himself from a front-row table and ascended the small set of stairs to the stage. The move was fluid, confident, and utterly disruptive. The room fell into a confused hush. The man was Marcus Vance, CEO of Vance Corp, Eris's chief competitor and a titan of the old guard of tech, a world of ruthless acquisition and market dominance. Marcus was everything Eris was not effusively charming, his smile a weapon of mass appeal, his movements exuding an inherited ease with power. He carried a champagne flute, holding it up as if to offer a toast. "Forgive my interruption," Marcus began, his voice a smooth baritone that the stage microphone picked up perfectly. "I simply couldn't let this moment pass without adding my own congratulations. Eris, what you've accomplished is truly remarkable." He placed a hand on Eris's shoulder, a gesture that looked supportive to the audience, but felt like a brand to Eris. The temperature of his skin seemed to drop. "To see you standing here, a pillar of the community, a beacon of hope. It's inspiring," Marcus continued, his eyes twinkling with something other than admiration. He turned slightly, addressing the crowd, but looking at Eris. "It's a testament to the fact that anyone, no matter their background, no matter the unfortunate detours they might take in their youth, can find their way. You've truly managed to put the past behind you." The words were coded, meaningless to the 1,000 people watching, but to Eris, they were shotgun blasts at the fortress walls. Unfortunate detours. Put the past behind you. Marcus was not congratulating him. He was reminding him that he, Marcus Vance, held the keys to a history Eris had spent 2 decades burying. The ballroom air seemed to thin. The scent of expensive perfume and floral arrangements became cloying. The polite smiles of the audience blurred into a gallery of indistinct faces. A sound, faint at first, began to build in Eris's ears, not the sound of the gala, but of screeching tires on wet asphalt, the sickening crunch of metal, the sharp, crystalline shatter of glass. Flashback. Rain. So much rain. Plastering his thin jacket to his skin. He's 19, standing on the shoulder of a dark, Slick country road. The world is spinning, tilted on an axis of blue and red flashing lights. A voice is shouting, not at him, but near him. A younger Marcus Vance, his face pale and contorted with a terror Eris has never seen before, is pulling at his arm. You have to tell them it was you. Eris, please. My father will kill me. My life will be over. You. They'll go easy on you. You know they will. The smell of gasoline and something coppery, something warm. Another boy, Leo, his best friend, is lying so still beside the mangled wreck of the car, so terrifyingly still. The rain washes over Leo's face, but he doesn't blink. Please, Eris, it's the only way. I'll make it up to you. I swear I will. I'll take care of you forever. The memory dissolved as quickly as it had come, leaving behind an icy residue in his veins. He was back on the stage, the warmth of the spotlight feeling like an interrogation lamp. Marcus was still smiling, his hand still on Eris's shoulder. The entire interruption had lasted less than 30 seconds. To the world, Marcus Vance had just paid tribute to a worthy rival, to Eris. He had just put a leash around his neck and rattled it for the whole world not to see. Eris felt a cold fury, pure and solid, crystallize in his chest. It was an old feeling, one he had suppressed for years under layers of discipline, meditation, and relentless work. Now, it returned like a long-lost friend. He met Marcus's gaze. The flicker of triumph in the other man's eyes was unmistakable. Eris slowly, deliberately, reached up and removed Marcus's hand from his shoulder. He did not shove it away. He lifted it, held it for a beat, and then placed it back at Marcus's side. A gesture of finality. He stepped back to the microphone, his composure a perfect, unbroken mask. Thank you, Marcus, Eris said, his voice as steady as before. It's true. The past teaches us invaluable lessons. Some of us learn about responsibility. Others. He paused, letting his eyes sweep over Marcus's handsome, smiling face. Learn how to build empires on convenient fictions. A ripple of confusion went through the audience. Was this part of the rivalry, a playful jab? Marcus's smile tightened at the edges. He hadn't expected a response. Certainly not one so precise. Eris turned back to the crowd, his own smile serene, almost beatific. But the most important lesson is this. The future is not written. We write it, with every choice we make, with every truth we decide to honor. He raised his crystal award. Thank you. The applause that followed was thunderous. If a bit perplexed, Marcus, caught on stage, had no choice but to join in, his clapping a hollow percussion against the genuine ovation. As Eris walked off the stage, he passed Marcus. That was a mistake, Marcus whispered, his voice losing its public charm, replaced by a low, venomous hiss. Eris didn't stop walking. He didn't need to look back. He knew the war had just been declared. The fortress he had built was no longer for defense. It was now an arsenal. Eris Thorne's life was a monument to order, a meticulously crafted ecosystem designed to starve the chaos of his past. His penthouse apartment, occupying the entire top floor of a sleek, LEED-certified tower in the heart of the city, was a study in minimalist precision. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a god's-eye view of the metropolis. The distant, frantic energy of the streets rendered silent and abstract. The air was filtered, the temperature constant, the color palette a soothing symphony of grays, whites, and brushed steel. There were no photographs, no sentimental trinkets, no clutter. It was a space designed for a mind, not a heart. His company, Thorn Dynamics, mirrored this philosophy. The campus was a sprawling masterpiece of glass and greenery, a fusion of biophilic design and cutting-edge technology. Yet, within its serene walls, Eris operated with the discipline of a military strategist. His days were partitioned into 5-minute increments. His objectives defined by clear, quantifiable metrics. This relentless control was his shield. It was how he'd transformed himself from the wreckage of his youth, a scholarship kid with a juvenile record, and a ghost for a best friend, into the man he was today. His inner circle was small, fiercely loyal, and chosen with the same precision he applied to everything else. They were the only ones permitted inside the fortress walls. Elena Rostova was his chief of strategy, and, unofficially, his conscience. A former MI6 analyst in her late 50s. She had a mind like a steel trap and eyes that missed nothing. She'd left the world of state-sponsored espionage for the more lucrative but no less dangerous theater of corporate intelligence. Eris had hired her 10 years ago, and she had since become the bedrock of his operation. She was the one who vetted his partners, stress-tested his strategies, and often knew what he was thinking before he did. His performance at the gala was a dominance play, Elena said, her voice a low, gravelly hum. They were in Eris's office, a space that felt more like a command center than a corporate suite. A vast, interactive screen dominated one wall, currently displaying a complex network map centered on VanceCorp. It wasn't just an insult, it was a strategic probe. He's testing your defenses, reminding you he holds a weapon you don't. He's overplayed his hand, Eris replied, his gaze fixed on the glowing schematic of Marcus Vance's empire. He believes that after all these years, I'm still the same scared kid from that roadside. Are you? Elena's question was blunt, devoid of judgment. It was her job to ask the hard questions. Eris turned from the screen. That kid is gone. Marcus and his father made sure of that. The third member of his team was a digital ghost who went by the handle Jinx. Eris had never met them in person. Their collaboration existed entirely in encrypted channels and secure servers. Jinx was a prodigy, a 20-something hacker who could dance through firewalls and pluck secrets from the darkest corners of the web. Eris had discovered Jinx when they'd breached Thorn Dynamics' nascent security systems years ago. Not to steal anything, but to point out the vulnerabilities. Instead of prosecution, Eris offered a job. Jinx's loyalty was absolute. A message from Jinx blinked onto the screen. Eris felt the cold fury from the gala return. Marcus wasn't just probing, he was attacking. Project Nightingale was Thorn Dynamics' most sensitive R&D initiative, a revolutionary neural interface technology. If Marcus could successfully frame him for attempting to steal VanceCorp's competing research, the scandal would be catastrophic. It would destroy his reputation, trigger federal investigations, and likely gut his company. Marcus Vance wielded power in a way Eris never had. His influence was old, inherited, and woven into the very fabric of the city's power structures. VanceCorp's board was a who's who of political and financial dynasties. His lawyers were the stuff of legend, capable of burying truths under mountains of litigation. His PR machine could spin a narrative so compelling that reality itself would seem like a cheap imitation. The gleam of VanceCorp Tower, a monolith of black glass that physically overshadowed Thorn Dynamics campus, was a constant, arrogant reminder of that power. It was a fortress of a different kind, one built not for defense, but for conquest. Elena, Eris said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, I want you to start digging. Go back 23 years. I want to know everything about the accident, the police reports, the witness statements, the ones that were recorded and the ones that weren't. Find the responding officers. Find the EMTs. Find Marcus's father's lawyer from that time. Someone was paid. Someone was threatened. I want to know who." Elena nodded slowly, her expression grim. "This is a dangerous path. Eris, you're not just going after Marcus. You're going after his father's legacy. They won't just fight back. They'll try to erase you." "They already tried that once," Eris said, his eyes hard. "This time, I'm ready." He turned back to the secure terminal to contact Jinx. The time for defense was over. The meticulously constructed order of his life had been a preparation, a training ground. He had built his fortress not just to keep the past out, but to withstand the storm he was about to unleash. A new message appeared from Jinx. Eris stared at the message. The inciting incident. Marcus had made his move, leveraging their shared history to lend credence to the lie. He would paint Eris as a man with a dark past, a man capable of anything, a man who had gotten away with something once before and was now returning to his criminal roots. It was a brilliant, vicious strategy. Eris's fingers flew across the keyboard, his instructions to Jinx precise and immediate. For years, Eris had lived by a code of ethics, believing he could win by being smarter, faster, better. He had built bridges while Marcus built walls. Now, he saw the naivete in that belief. In a war against a man with no honor, the only rule was to win. He picked up his phone and dialed his lawyer. "David," he said, his voice calm. "I'm about to be accused of corporate espionage. I need you to file a preemptive injunction against Vance Corp for market manipulation and issue a press release stating that we have uncovered an elaborate scheme to frame me. Don't act like we're on defense. We're on the attack." As he spoke, he looked out the window at the city sprawling below. For the first time in a long time, the view didn't feel abstract. It felt like a battlefield, and the first shot had just been fired. The official assault came less than 24 hours later. It was a masterfully orchestrated blitzkrieg. A headline in the Wall Street Chronicle screamed, "Tech visionary Dr. Aris Thorne implicated in espionage scheme." The article was a well-crafted piece of character assassination, citing anonymous sources from within Vance Corp who spoke of a pattern of aggressive and unethical behavior. It subtly referenced Eris's troubled youth and a sealed juvenile record. Painting the picture, Marcus wanted the world to see a brilliant but flawed man whose ambition had finally tipped into criminality. Simultaneously, the SEC announced a formal inquiry. Federal agents, in a move clearly leaked to the press, arrived at the Thorne Dynamics campus, their dark suits a stark contrast to the company's open, airy aesthetic. They seized servers, copied files, and projected an air of somber authority. Eris's board of directors, normally steadfast, grew nervous. Shareholders panicked. The stock price of Thorne Dynamics, which had enjoyed a steady, two-year climb, plummeted by 30% in the opening hours of trading. Eris's first move was to attempt a conventional defense. He met with his legal team, a high-powered group from the city's most prestigious firm. They were confident, sharp, and utterly out of their depth. "We'll fight this." "Eris," said David Chen, his lead counsel. "We'll file motions to dismiss. We'll challenge the evidence. The transfer is clearly a fabrication. The digital signature is a forgery. It will take time, but the truth will prevail." Eris listened, his face an impassive mask. He knew they were wrong. Marcus hadn't built a case designed to win in court. He'd built one designed to win in the court of public opinion, and to bleed Thorne Dynamics dry in the process. The legal battle would take years, cost tens of millions. And by the time his name was cleared, his company would be a hollowed-out shell. Marcus's influence ran too deep. The first obstacle materialized a week later. The Vance Corp scientist, who had supposedly received the wire transfer, a man named Dr. Alistair Finch, was scheduled to give a deposition. The night before, he was set to testify. He vanished. His lawyer claimed he had left the country, terrified of being embroiled in a corporate war. A note, conveniently left behind, confessed to his role in selling secrets to Thorne Dynamics, corroborating Marcus's entire narrative. He's been paid off and sent to a tropical paradise with no extradition treaty, Elena stated, her analysis cold and factual. They were in their secure communications room, a subterranean bunker beneath Eris's penthouse. Finch's debts have all been cleared by an anonymous benefactor. His family is well taken care of. He's gone for good. The second obstacle was digital. Jinx, attempting to trace the origins of the fabricated evidence, hit a wall of unprecedented complexity. Jinx typed, the words appearing on the main screen. The system was rigged. Every official channel was a dead end. Every piece of exculpatory evidence Eris's team found was countered by a new, more damning fabrication from Marcus. Witnesses changed their stories. Journalists who had once been friendly now wrote scathing opinion pieces. Marcus was playing chess on a board where he controlled all the pieces. It was during a late-night strategy session that the futility of his approach became undeniable. David Chen was outlining a complex legal maneuver involving international banking laws. And if we can subpoena the records from the bank in the Cayman Islands, we might be able to prove the account was created by a third party, David explained, pointing to a flowchart on the screen. Eris held up a hand, silencing him. It doesn't matter. David. What do you mean? It doesn't matter. It's the crux of our defense. By the time we get that subpoena, which we won't, my company will be bankrupt and I'll be under federal indictment, Aris said, his voice flat. He stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city lights. Marcus isn't playing by the rules. So neither will I. He turned back to his team. David, I want you to continue the legal fight. Make as much noise as possible. File countersuits. Drown them in paperwork. Create a smokescreen. Elena, Jinx, the real war starts now. A grim understanding settled over the room. This was no longer about defense. Eris was conceding the public battle to fight a shadow war. He had tried to use the tools of the system he respected, but Marcus had proven that the system could be bought. The law. Evidence. Truth, they were all commodities to a man like Marcus Vance. Eris had hoped to avoid this path. For years, he had channeled his rage and his pain into constructive ambition. He had built, not destroyed. But Marcus had left him no choice. To save his life's work, and to reclaim the truth of his past, he would have to dismantle Marcus Vance's world, piece by insidious piece. The first obstacle had not broken him. It had liberated him. It had stripped away his faith in a system that had failed him once as a boy and was failing him again as a man. He was no longer Dr. Eris Thorne, the respected humanitarian. He was a strategist, a survivor, and now, a hunter. And his first target was the foundation of lies upon which the Vance Empire was built. The campaign began, not with a bang, but with a whisper. Eris understood that a frontal assault on Vance Corp would be suicidal. Marcus's power was a monolith, seemingly impenetrable. But even monoliths have fissures. The first phase of the plan, codenamed Tectonic Shift, was designed to exploit those fissures, to create subtle, internal pressures that would weaken the entire structure from within. The first target was Vance Corp's stock price. Marcus's reputation was inextricably linked to his company's market performance. He was the golden boy who had inherited an empire and made it even more powerful. "He's overleveraged," Jinx reported from their digital sanctum. Eris saw the opening. "I don't want to crash the stock." "Jinx, not yet. I want to make it unpredictable. I want Marcus's investors to feel nervous." Jinx went to work. They didn't hack the stock exchange. That was crude and easily traceable. Instead, they orchestrated a symphony of digital chaos. They initiated a high-frequency trading algorithm that bought and sold fractional shares of VanceCorp stock thousands of times a second, creating artificial volatility. Then, they seeded financial news forums and social media with carefully crafted rumors, amplified by a network of AI-driven bot accounts. The rumors were never outrageous, always plausible whispers of a delayed product launch, a key executive planning to resign, a regulatory hurdle in the European market. The effect was immediate. VanceCorp's stock began to seesaw erratically. It would dip 3% in the morning, rally in the afternoon, then close down 2%. For the average investor, it was noise. For the institutional funds and hedge fund managers who formed the bedrock of Marcus's support, it was a sign of instability. The phone calls to Marcus's CFO started to increase. While Jinx played the markets, Elena Rostova targeted the human element. Her objective was to turn Marcus's allies against him. Her first mark was Julian Croft, VanceCorp's ruthless head of acquisitions, a man known for his loyalty to Marcus and his brutal negotiation tactics. "Croft has one weakness," Elena reported, sliding a slim file across the table to Eris. "His daughter. She has a rare autoimmune disorder. Her treatment at a private clinic in Switzerland costs over $2 million a year. VanceCorp's executive insurance policy covers it, but Marcus holds the discretionary approval." It was a cruel but effective leash. Eris felt a pang of distaste. "We're not going after his daughter." "Elena." "Of course not," Elena replied, her tone sharp. "We're going after the leash. Jinx, can you find me a ghost in VanceCorp's HR system?" Jinx's reply was instantaneous. 2 days later, an anonymous email landed in Julian Croft's inbox. It contained a draft of a memo, seemingly from Marcus Vance to the board's compensation committee. The memo proposed a restructuring of the executive benefits package, specifically citing the exorbitant and unsustainable costs of certain discretionary medical coverages. It suggested capping such benefits, a move that would leave Croft personally liable for his daughter's treatment. The memo was a complete fabrication, a masterpiece of corporate language created by Jinx and planted on a firewalled server where it would appear legitimate if Croft's IT department tried to verify it. Croft panicked. He saw not a corporate restructuring, but a direct threat from Marcus. His loyalty, which had been bought with security, evaporated the moment that security was threatened. He responded to the anonymous email. "What do you want?" The reply was simple. "Everything you have on Project Chimera." Project Chimera was Marcus's black box R&D division, the source of VanceCorp's most valuable and often stolen intellectual property. Croft, as head of acquisitions, had files on every company VanceCorp had ever targeted, bought, or crushed, within a week. A heavily encrypted data dump arrived on Eris's server. It was a treasure trove of corporate malfeasance evidence of patent theft, hostile takeovers based on insider information, and technology acquired through industrial espionage. The first leak was surgical. Eris, through Jinx, provided an exclusive story to a young, ambitious reporter at a niche tech journal. The story detailed how VanceCorp had stolen the core technology for their best-selling line of smart home devices from a small startup, then buried the company in litigation until it went bankrupt. The documents Croft provided were irrefutable. The story went viral. A class action lawsuit was filed by the startup's original founders within days. Marcus was furious, but he couldn't trace the source. He launched an internal witch hunt, his paranoia creating a toxic atmosphere of suspicion within his executive team. He saw betrayal everywhere, never suspecting the real attack was coming from the outside. Throughout this period, Aris was being haunted. The flashbacks to the accident were becoming more frequent, more vivid. They were no longer just flashes of light and sound. They were coherent scenes. He's in the back of the car. Leo is driving. Marcus is in the passenger seat, goading him on. Faster. Leo, don't you want to see if this piece of junk can actually hit 100? Leo, always so eager to please, so desperate for Marcus's approval, pushes the accelerator. The car is old, a hand-me-down from Leo's father. The tires are bald. The rain is relentless. They come over a blind crest in the road too fast. A deer is frozen in the headlights. Leo swerves. The car hydroplanes, spinning in a sickening, uncontrolled pirouette. The world becomes a blur of green and black. Then the explosive impact as they hit the ancient oak tree at the side of the road. Aris would wake up from these visions, his heart pounding, the smell of rain and gasoline thick in his nostrils. He was remembering details he had suppressed for over 2 decades. He remembered the feel of the cheap upholstery, the song that was playing on the radio, the look of pure joy on Leo's face just before the turn. He was getting closer to the truth, and the proximity was both terrifying and clarifying. He was in the middle of a late-night analysis of VanceCorp's compromised supply chain when Elena entered his command center. Her face was pale. "I found him," she said, one of the first responding paramedics from the accident. "His name is Frank Miller. He retired 5 years ago, moved to a cabin in Montana. It took some doing, but he's agreed to talk to me." Aris felt a jolt, a surge of adrenaline that had nothing to do with his war against Marcus. This was different. This was about Leo. "What did he say?" Aris asked, his voice tight. "He said he's been waiting for someone to call for 23 years, Elena replied, reading from her notes. "He said the official report was a lie," he said when he arrived on the scene. "There were only 2 boys outside the car. You and Marcus." He said Leo. Leo wasn't in the driver's seat. The revelation from the paramedic, Frank Miller, was the key that unlocked the sealed tomb of Aris's memory. Elena's call had been brief, but its impact was seismic. Leo wasn't in the driver's seat. The words echoed in Aris's mind, shattering the carefully constructed narrative he had been fed and had forced himself to believe for 23 years. The story had been that Leo was driving recklessly, that Aris, as the other survivor in the car, had taken a plea deal for being an accessory, his juvenile record a testament to a night of tragic misadventure. But the truth was far more sinister. Elena flew to Montana the next day. The meeting with Frank Miller took place in a small diner off a desolate highway, the kind of place where secrets could be spoken aloud without fear of being overheard. Elena recorded the conversation, streaming the encrypted audio back to Aris in real time. Miller's voice was weary, heavy with the burden of a long-kept secret. The Vance kid's father showed up before the sheriff did. He explained, big, powerful man. Looked at the scene, saw his son bawling his eyes out, and just took control. The other kid, Thorne. He was in shock. Couldn't even speak. The driver, Leo. He was gone. Pinned in the passenger seat. The impact on that side was catastrophic. Aris listened, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of his desk. He closed his eyes, and the final pieces of the memory slammed into place. He's crawling out of the shattered back window. His head is bleeding. Marcus is already out, stumbling around the wreck, screaming, "Oh God! Oh God!" Aris sees Leo slumped over in the passenger seat, his body unnaturally still, and in the driver's seat. The door, crushed inward, is a void. No one. He was thrown from the car. No, that wasn't right. He remembers now. Marcus was the one who climbed out of the driver's side. Then, Marcus's father is there. The imposing, terrifying figure of Senator Thomas Vance. He assesses the scene in an instant. He grabs Marcus, shakes him. Who was driving, he demands. Marcus, through his tears, points a shaking finger at Eris. He was no. Leo was driving. The lie is clumsy, born of panic. Senator Vance's eyes, cold and calculating, fall upon Eris. He sees a scared, injured kid from the wrong side of the tracks, a perfect scapegoat. He puts his arm around his son. It's all right. Marcus, we'll fix this. Leo was driving. It was a tragic accident. The audio feed from Elena continued. The senator pulled me and my partner aside. Miller said, he told us it was a tragic night, that his son was in shock, and that for the sake of the families. The story needed to be simple. The boy who died was the one driving. He opened his briefcase. There was cash in it. More money than I'd ever seen. My partner took it. I didn't. But I kept my mouth shut. I was young. Had a family. You don't say no to a man like Senator Vance. Elena's voice cut in, sharp and precise. Do you still have any proof? Frank, anything from that night? There was a long pause. The senator's lawyer made us sign non-disclosure agreements the next day, said it was standard procedure. But I kept my copy. And I kept the original triage tag I put on Marcus Vance. The one that identifies his injuries. Contusions on the left side of his body. Bruising across his chest in the distinct pattern of a steering wheel column impact. Eris stopped breathing. The proof. Physical. Undeniable proof. It all made sense now. Marcus's lifelong obsession with him. His constant need to see him fail. To belittle his success. It wasn't just corporate rivalry. It was the desperate, pathological need of a guilty man to reinforce his own lie. By destroying Eris. By painting him as a man with a criminal nature. Marcus could validate the story he had told himself and the world for 2 decades. If Eris was a bad person. Then what happened that night wasn't an injustice. It was just a bad person getting what they deserved. Marcus's vendetta wasn't an act of aggression. It was an act of self-preservation. A frantic attempt to keep his own demons at bay. The mission had transformed. This was no longer about professional survival or corporate revenge. It was about reclaiming a stolen truth. It was about justice for Leo, whose memory had been desecrated to protect a powerful family's name. It was about freeing himself from the shadow of a lie that had shaped the entire trajectory of his life. Elena, Eris said, his voice raw with an emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Get that evidence. Whatever it takes. Bring Frank here. We'll put him in protective custody. Jinx. He switched channels, his tone hardening, shifting from personal grief to tactical command. Our focus is changing. I want you to find any and all communication between Marcus Vance and his father from the last 23 years that references the accident, Leo, or the old debt. They're arrogant. They must have slipped up somewhere. The fury he felt now was different. It was no longer cold and calculated. It was white-hot. Righteous. He looked at the vast, glowing map of Vance Corp's empire on his wall. He had been chipping away at the edges, weakening its defenses. Now, he was going for the heart. He wasn't just going to ruin Marcus Vance's business. He was going to expose the foundational lie of his entire life. He pulled up an old, digitized photograph on a private, encrypted server, It was the only one he had kept. 3 teenagers, arms slung around each other, grinning at the camera. He, Marcus, and Leo. They were 17, standing on a pier at a lake house, the summer sun lighting up their faces. They looked invincible, their futures a limitless horizon. Eris zoomed in on Leo's face. His smile was wide, full of life and easy trust. "I'm sorry, my friend," Eris thought. "I'm sorry I let them do this to you. I'm sorry I was too weak to fight for you. But I'm not weak anymore." The battle for Thorn Dynamics was over. The war for Leo's legacy had just begun. The moment Marcus Vance realized he was not the predator, but the prey, the nature of the game changed. The subtle stock fluctuations, the inconvenient leaks, the growing paranoia within his ranks, he had dismissed them as the cost of doing business. Perhaps the desperate flailings of a cornered Eris Thorn. But when the class action lawsuit over the stolen smart home tech was fast-tracked by a federal judge, and 3 of his key European suppliers simultaneously canceled their contracts citing ethical concerns, he knew. This was not a defense. It was a coordinated, systematic assault. His response was immediate and brutal. He abandoned the pretense of corporate maneuvering and reverted to the tactics of his father, raw, intimidating force. He was a cornered animal, and he would lash out at anyone perceived as a threat. The first target was Jinx, Marcus's state-level security contractors, a shadowy firm of ex-intelligence operatives. Finally found a thread. A single data packet, infinitesimally small, had been misdirected during the stock manipulation campaign. It was enough. They traced it back, not to Jinx's true location, but to a server that contained their digital signature. With that, they could build a profile. They couldn't find Jinx, so they did the next best thing: they created a Jinx. An anonymous tip was sent to the FBI's cybercrime division. It implicated Jinx not in corporate sabotage, but in acts of domestic terrorism specifically, attempting to hack into the nation's power grid. The evidence was fabricated, but it was compelling. Jinx's online moniker, once a symbol of digital freedom, was now on the most wanted list. Jinx's message appeared on Eris's screen, stark and without the usual playful tone. Eris felt a cold dread. He had brought this down on them. The final message from Jinx was a single character. The cursor blinked once, then vanished. Eris's most powerful weapon was gone. Next, Marcus went after Elena. He couldn't touch her directly. She was too careful. A professional ghost. So he targeted the only thing she cared about, more than her work, her son. A journalist, working on an exposé of corrupt private military contractors in South America. One morning, Elena received a photo on her encrypted phone. It was her son, sitting at a cafe in Bogotá, taken from across the street with a telephoto lens. The message was just 2 words: go home. Elena walked into Eris's command center that afternoon, her face a mask of stone. She placed her phone on the table. "I'm out. Aris. He won't make a second threat." "Elena, we can protect him." "No, you can't." She cut him off, her voice cracking for the first time since he'd known her. "Not from these people. They don't operate in your world of code and stock prices. They operate in a world of unmarked vans and quiet disappearances. I have to go to him." Within hours, she was on a flight to Colombia. Eris was alone. His team, his only allies, had been surgically removed from the board. It was then that Marcus made his final move, a direct, personal strike designed to end the war. Aris was working late when a notification popped up on his personal calendar. It was a meeting request from Marcus Vance. The location was a private club, one so exclusive it had no name. The time was midnight. Aris went. He knew it was a trap, but he also knew it was an endgame. He walked into the dimly lit, wood-paneled room. Marcus was sitting alone in a leather armchair, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. "I have to admit, Aris, you've been more resourceful than I anticipated," Marcus began, his voice smooth as silk. "The stock, the leaks, turning Croft. It was an impressive effort, but the game is over." He gestured to a tablet on the table between them. He tapped the screen, and a video file opened. It was a professionally produced news segment, a deepfake so perfect it was indistinguishable from reality. It featured a somber-looking news anchor detailing the shocking new evidence in the death of Leo Carter. An audio expert testified that a recovered tape from the night of the accident revealed Aris Thorne confessing to having supplied Leo with drugs that caused him to lose control of the car. Another expert, a forensic psychologist, explained how Aris's history of antisocial behavior pointed to him being the true instigator of the tragedy. "This is a lie," Aris said, his voice a low growl. "Of course it is," Marcus said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "But it's a very believable lie, and I have it ready to be delivered to every major news network in the world. The moment it airs, you won't just be a corporate pariah, you'll be a murderer in the public eye. Your company will be finished, your legacy will be poison, and my version of the past becomes the official, permanent record." He leaned forward, his eyes glinting with a lifetime of resentment. "You have a choice. Aris, drop your lawsuits, issue a public apology, and a full confession to the corporate espionage charges. Take the plea deal the SEC will offer you. In return, this story stays a work of fiction. You'll be disgraced, but you'll be free if you don't. I will not only destroy your future, I will rewrite your past and salt the earth of your friend's memory." The threat was absolute. Marcus was holding everything hostage: Aris's freedom, his life's work, and Leo's honor. He had been outmaneuvered, his forces scattered, his king checked. Marcus smiled, a triumphant, predatory gleam in his eyes. He thought he had won. But he was wrong. He didn't realize that in stripping Aris of his team and his conventional weapons, he had left him with the one thing that had been forged in the crucible of that long-ago tragedy: a cold, unbreakable resolve. And he didn't know that Frank Miller, the paramedic, was safely hidden away. He didn't know about the triage tag, and he didn't know that the world's biggest tech summit was in 2 days, where Marcus Vance was scheduled to deliver the keynote address to a global, live-streamed audience. Marcus thought he was offering terms of surrender. Aris saw it as a final, desperate mistake. The Zenith Tech Summit was the Davos of the digital age, a global stage where the future was unveiled. The main auditorium was a cavernous amphitheater of brushed steel and glowing light, packed with thousands of journalists, investors, and industry leaders. Millions more were watching the live stream online. This year, the coveted keynote address belonged to Marcus Vance. He was set to launch Vance Corp's most ambitious product yet, Legacy, a revolutionary operating system that promised to unify all of a user's digital devices into a single, seamless ecosystem. Marcus strode onto the stage to thunderous applause. He was in his element, a master showman basking in the global spotlight. He looked impeccable, his charisma radiating from the massive screens that flanked the stage. "Today, we are not just launching a product," Marcus began, his voice resonating with manufactured passion. "We are launching a new era of connection, an era of legacy." From a darkened control room high above the auditorium, Aris watched on a bank of monitors. He was a ghost in the machine. He hadn't needed Jinx for this final act, for years. Thorne Dynamics had been a primary sponsor of the Zenith Summit. Eris himself had helped design the network architecture for the presentation systems. He knew every backdoor, every exploit, every line of code. He had built a Trojan horse into the heart of the system years ago, a failsafe he never thought he'd use. As Marcus began the product demonstration, Eris initiated his attack. He didn't cut the feed or black out the screens. His method was more elegant, more insidious. "Legacy connects you to what matters most," Marcus said, as a slick promotional video began to play on the main screen, showing a happy family using VanceCorp products. Eris let the video play for 10 seconds. Then, he spliced in a single frame an image of Julian Croft's fabricated termination memo. It was on screen for less than 1/30th of a second. An imperceptible flash to the conscious mind, but a seed planted in the subconscious. He continued this pattern, as Marcus spoke of trust and security. Eris flashed an image of the doctored news report meant to frame him. As Marcus extolled the virtues of innovation, Eris inserted a split-second shot of the stolen patent from the bankrupted startup. On stage, Marcus felt a subtle shift in the room's energy. The applause was a little less enthusiastic. A low murmur was rippling through the crowd. He faltered for a moment, then pressed on, his professional smile unwavering. "Now, let me show you the power of legacy," he said, turning to a massive interactive display. This was Eris's moment. He seized full control of the presentation system. The VanceCorp logo on the screen dissolved, replaced by a high-resolution scan of a single document, the non-disclosure agreement that Senator Thomas Vance had forced a young paramedic named Frank Miller to sign 23 years ago. Marcus froze. He stared at the screen, his mind struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. The crowd fell silent, the murmur replaced by a collective gasp. Eris's voice unseen, disembodied, and amplified by the auditorium's state-of-the-art sound system filled the room. "You spoke of legacy. Marcus, let's talk about the real legacy you inherited." The NDA vanished, replaced by a photo of the paramedic's triage tag from the night of the accident. Eris's voice narrated, calm and damningly clear. "This tag notes the injuries you sustained, contusions consistent with the impact of a steering wheel column, the injuries of a driver, not a passenger." Panic flashed in Marcus's eyes. He frantically signaled to the tech crew backstage. But they were helpless. Eris had locked them out. "You've spent your life building an empire on a lie," Eris's voice continued, as a photo of a smiling Leo Carter appeared on the screen. A heartbreaking image of lost youth. The lie that this boy, Leo Carter, was responsible for his own death. But he wasn't driving. The final piece of evidence appeared a video. It was Frank Miller, the paramedic. His face aged, but his memory clear, giving a sworn deposition. He recounted the entire story: the senator's arrival, the cash, the cover-up, the truth of who was in the driver's seat. Marcus was unraveling on a world stage. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his charismatic mask crumbling to reveal the terrified boy from the roadside. "This is a lie. It's all fake. He's a criminal, a corporate spy." He stammered into his microphone, his voice shrill. "The truth is the truth. Marcus," Eris's voice concluded, "and Leo deserves his—" Eris was about to project the final evidence, the financial records showing Senator Vance's payment to the other paramedic. The proof that would lead to criminal charges for manslaughter and conspiracy, when Marcus, cornered and desperate, played his final, unexpected card. He ripped the microphone from its stand and screamed, his voice raw with desperation. "Stop! You do this, and you destroy her. You destroy Clara." The name hit Eris like a physical blow. Clara, Marcus's younger sister. The quiet, artistic girl he had known all those years ago. The girl who used to look at him with admiration before the accident had turned her family against him. "The core patent for the Legacy OS," Marcus shouted, his eyes wild. "It's not owned by Vance Corp. It's held in a trust under her name. It was her idea, her work from when she was an intern. I used it to build the entire platform. If Vance Corp collapses, the patent becomes worthless. The trust is wiped out, and she will be bankrupt. Ruined. She'll lose everything. Is that what you want? Oris, is your revenge worth her life?" The secondary twist hung in the air. A stunning, brutal complication. The global audience watched, breathless. Eris, hidden in his control room, was faced with a split-second moral choice. He could deliver the final, killing blow, achieving total vengeance, and clearing Leo's name completely. But in doing so, he would obliterate the life of an innocent person he had once cared for. Or he could show mercy, leaving his victory incomplete. His finger hovered over the command that would release the final proof. Total justice, or selective mercy. The world was watching. The silence in the auditorium was absolute. A vast, compressed vacuum waiting for a decision. Millions of people online watched the frozen tableau, Marcus Vance. A desperate, broken man on stage. And the unseen, omniscient voice of Eris Thorne, holding the power of his destruction. In his control room, Eris saw Clara's face in his mind, not the woman she had become, but the girl she had been, sketching in a notebook by the lake, oblivious to the toxic ambitions of her father and brother. His choice, when it came, was a reflection of the man he had become, not the one Marcus's betrayal had almost made him. He did not release the final financial proof. Instead, a new document filled the giant screens behind Marcus. It was a legal filing, time-stamped just moments before. It was a motion, filed by Eris's lawyers, to place Vance Corp's intellectual property assets, specifically the legacy patent held by the trust in Clara Vance's name, into a temporary, protected conservatorship. The stated reason was to shield it from the imminent corporate collapse and federal investigation facing the company's CEO. It was a move of surgical precision. He was building a firewall in real time. Then, Aris's voice returned, not with the cold tone of an accuser, but with a quiet, final authority. "Your crimes are your own, Marcus. They do not belong to your sister." The final image he projected was not evidence. It was the photograph from his private server, 3 boys on a pier, smiling under a summer sun. The image of a friendship, a brotherhood, before it was all destroyed. "This is for Leo," Eris's voice said. A final, quiet tribute. Then the screens went dark. The fallout was instantaneous. As the house lights came up, federal agents, who had been alerted by Eris's legal team and had been waiting in the wings, walked calmly onto the stage. They didn't run. Their movements were deliberate, almost solemn. Marcus Vance stood motionless as they approached, the fight completely gone from him. He was placed in handcuffs on the same stage where he was meant to cement his legacy. The flash of cameras was blinding. The global markets reacted with brutal speed. Vance Corp stock was halted, but in after-hours trading, its value was wiped out. The board resigned en masse. The empire that Thomas Vance had built and Marcus had expanded had crumbled to dust in less than 15 minutes. Eris watched it all from his hidden perch. He felt no triumph, no elation, just a profound, hollow emptiness. The rage that had fueled him for so long had been expended, and in its place was only the quiet grief for what had been lost 23 years ago. He slipped out of the control room undetected and made his way back to the secure bunker beneath his penthouse. Elena was there, watching the news reports on a monitor. She had flown back the moment she knew her son was safe. She looked up as he entered, her expression unreadable. "You did it," she said. It wasn't a question. "We did it," he corrected her. "You let her go," Elena observed, gesturing to a news report about Clara Vance's patent being protected. "The sister." Eris nodded, sinking into a chair. He felt weary down to his bones. Total victory would have meant becoming him, destroying an innocent to win. I couldn't do that. Leo wouldn't have wanted that. He thought about the cost. His name was cleared. His company was safe. And the truth was finally out. But the battle had taken its toll. He had ventured into the darkness, used the weapons of his enemy, and had come dangerously close to losing himself in the process. The victory felt less like a celebration and more like a convalescence. He had won the war, but the scars would remain. He looked at Elena, the one person who had seen him through it all. Was it worth it, he asked, the question genuine. Elena was silent for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the screen where Marcus Vance's ruined face was being broadcast to the world. "Justice is always worth it, Eris," she finally replied, "but it's rarely free." 6 months later, the autumn air was crisp and cool. The chaos had subsided, replaced by the slow, grinding machinery of justice and rebuilding. Marcus Vance, after a swift trial, had been convicted of perjury, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. The manslaughter charges were complicated by the passage of time, but his public confession on the global stage had sealed his fate. His legacy was not one of innovation, but of infamy. Vance Corp was dismantled, its viable assets sold off, its name erased from the skyline. Eris Thorne stood on a newly dedicated quad at his old state university. He was not here as a tech CEO or a corporate victor. He was here as a man paying a debt to the past. Before him stood a gleaming new building, a state-of-the-art facility of glass and sustainable wood. Engraved in the polished granite by the entrance were the words, "The Leo Carter Center for Innovation and Ethical Science." Using the resources reclaimed from his battle and a significant portion of his own fortune, Eris had endowed the center. It was a place for bright, ambitious students, especially those from backgrounds like his and Leo's, to pursue their dreams without the crushing weight of financial burden. It was a living tribute, a way to transform the destructive energy of his revenge into something that would create, build, and empower. It was an act of rebirth, turning a victory born of pain into a legacy of hope. He wasn't scheduled to speak. He had insisted on attending merely as a guest. He watched as the university president spoke of philanthropy and the future. His words, a distant murmur. Eris's thoughts were on Leo, on the potential that had been extinguished on that dark, rainy road. This center was not just a building. It was a promise that Leo's spirit of curiosity and kindness would live on. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He glanced at the screen, expecting a message from Elena, but the name was one he never expected to see again. Clara Vance. His thumb hovered over the message, a wave of complex emotions washing over him: pity, old affection, a shared history of trauma. He opened it. The message was short, devoid of pleasantries, yet it carried an immense weight. "He's in prison. Our family name is ruined, and I know you did what you had to do for your friend. I will never forgive my brother for what he did to Leo, or to you, but I wanted to thank you, not for your revenge, but for your mercy. You could have destroyed me, but you chose not to. You saved a piece of my life, and I don't know why, but I am grateful for it. Thank you for remembering the person you used to be. Eris read the message twice. She was thanking him not for his power, but for his restraint, not for his victory, but for his humanity. It was an absolution he hadn't known he was seeking. He had spent months dismantling an empire built on a lie. But in that final, crucial moment, he had chosen to build a bridge rather than salt the earth. And that, he realized, was the final, true victory. He had not only defeated his enemy, he had defeated the version of himself his enemy had tried to create. He looked up at the name on the building, at the students milling about, their faces bright with promise. The wound of the past would never fully vanish, but it was no longer the defining feature of his life. He had finally closed the circle, not with vengeance, but with grace. His own legacy was no longer one of defense or retaliation. It was one of creation. The storm was over.